What's up, everybody? Welcome back to ALLSMITH. Today, I'm really excited to connect with a woman that's doing very empowering things in the world. But before I introduce her, I want to touch on a topic that's been floating around the surface and something that we all interact with uniquely in our own way, but it seemingly gets pushed into the corner or swept under the rug. And that's sex. It's everywhere. It sells products, drives culture, influences relationships, and it creates life. And it's one of the most fundamental parts of being human. And somehow it's still something so many of us are seemingly uncomfortable to talk about. Today we're going to talk openly, but more often than not, when you listen to these episodes, you hear about training, you hear about money, you hear about nutrition, you hear hormones, you hear mental health and longevity. But when it comes to sex, desire, intimacy, and what happens behind closed doors, things can get awkward pretty quickly. So today I brought on an amazing guest. We want to go there. We want to explore the deep, dark corners of sex, of intimacy, and of the things that have honestly created all of us listening. Our guest is Wendy Strgar, founder of Good Clean Love. She's an author, she's an entrepreneur, and someone who has spent more than 2 decades exploring things like sexual health, relationships, intimacy, and what it actually takes to sustain connection over a lifetime. This conversation is not just going to be about sex. It's going to be about love. It's going to be about desire, communication, aging, marriage, and how our bodies change, honestly. Because staying curious is about the person beside us. Learning, evolving, upgrading our operating systems, and learning how to talk about the things that we've honestly been conditioned to avoid. Wendy believes loving is a skill. It's a verb. It's something you actively have to participate in. It's not just an emotion. So today, let's get a little uncomfortable, guys. Let's ask some better questions and maybe learn something about ourselves along the way. Take down your guard, listen fully, and let's get ready to play. Wendy, welcome to ALLSMITH.
It's so nice to be here, Bryce. Thank you for that nice introduction. And I really believe that sex is, if we were more comfortable with ourselves as sexual human beings, and we leaned more towards that as kind of a fundamental way that we interacted with ourselves and other people, there'd be so much less violence in the world, so much less. So it's like, so honestly, violence is sort of the suppression, is the result of the suppression of our sexual needs in so many instances.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that, because you and I both know sex is honestly, it's everywhere. But honest conversations around it are kind of rare.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think that there have been decades, centuries even, of taboo around sex. And a lot of it was religious, right, at the beginning. And there was a lot of shame and misunderstanding about sort of the gift of our sexual selves. That still to this day impacts millions and millions of people. There's some people who would say, I didn't make this up, but I think it's true that in the Garden of Eden, the original sin, the apple, was literally orgasm. And I think that people understood pretty early on that if people had access to orgasm and really sacred connection that happens when you orgasm with somebody else, they wouldn't really need religion, because it's literally a holy experience to have that kind of communion with somebody. And so I feel like a lot of religion and all kinds of things have sort of altered our understanding of that really basic function in us. It's only been this year that we finally understand the clitoral organ system, And that's, I'm 64 years old. The very first time there was any literature at all around the clitoris, which, is like sort of a primary pleasure organ. I mean, that's like what its primary function is. We didn't know until this year that it has over 10,000 nerve endings, more than any other part of the body. And so there's multiple functions that serves, but think how long that's been understudied and not explained. I mean, I was close to 40 years old before I understood even my own sexual function, because the information literally wasn't in the world. So we have a lot of learning and shared understanding yet to explore when it comes to sex. And some of it is really literally anatomical, right? I mean, where you can't name a body part, or you can't identify how things work in your own body, it's really hard to trust your own experience. I think this is a really important conversation for people to become comfortable even with the anatomy of healthy sex, because that's not a given. Not everybody has that.
I appreciate you sharing, Wendy. In that same alignment, sex is vulnerable. It's in the center kind of our body. It feels like it needs to be guarded and protected. And in alignment with that, when you look at things like the gut-brain axis and how like feeling sometimes might have tension with logic. And because there's so much guilt and shame around sexual connection, sexual partners, who that potential holy experience or orgasm is with, and whether it's, a temporary feeling or it's something that both parties are in alignment in pursuit of peak expression and connection, there seemingly is a cloud of judgment over all of this from my observation. And I'm curious how we can explore that a little bit and create some principles or maybe some bullet points where when people make the decision to have a sexual partner, it's for the right reasons, but there's not guilt, shame, and judgment associated with it.
So, like you just said a million things right there. Mm-hmm. And so I think we should unpack it a little bit. So sexual choices are made in all kinds of conditions and relationship qualities. So I've been married for 44 years, and I've been having this sex with the same man for all that time, which seems crazy. And I have the most amazing sex of any woman you'd actually ever meet at 64. So that's one of the reasons I feel so comfortable talking about it. That said, many, many people have sex with people that they've just barely met. Maybe they've had exchanges with them online. Maybe it's more and more rare that people just meet each other someplace at a bar or someplace and go have sex. I mean, it's much more common, I think, now today to meet people online and then kind of decide to hook up, and depending on what app you're on, that, sometimes it's assumed that you're just doing that to have sex. And sometimes that's not clear, depending, like I said, on the app that you go to. So when you're having sex with a stranger, somebody you've never met before, somebody that you probably doesn't know how you like your coffee, or if you even drink coffee, they don't know what your favorite color is, they basically don't know anything about you, and you're actually agreeing to come into a sexual encounter that might have some element of danger, which has its own quality of sexiness in it, right? Like, or whatever. But, it's like really anything could happen in that environment, So, I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that the percentage of time that women specifically orgasm with sex with strangers is actually quite a bit smaller than when they're with somebody that's known to them and that's safe. So I think safety, like feeling secure, like you were saying, it's like you're so vulnerable. You're literally giving somebody access to the deepest part of the mystery of you when you have sex with them. So I think feeling comfortable enough in yourself to do that with a stranger in a strange place where you might never be, I think, there's a lot of stuff riding on that, and I think that's why there's frequently so little orgasm associated with that, and it's not just women, like for men, a lot of times sex is really about performance. And it's about believing and having, we always think sexual dysfunction is a female story, but it's not a female story. It's also a male story. For every woman that has low libido or low desire, there's men who have premature ejaculation or can't have an erection for long enough. Men have a lot of sexual issues too. And because of that, it makes them feel insecure. And many times they enter a sexual contact or a sexual moment really with only one concern of being able to perform and achieve their ejaculation at the end. So it becomes a race for them to get that done. And that, you're missing all the intimacy. Women don't function at that speed anyway, generally sexually. But even for the man, when he's just trying to get to the end, what about all the stuff in the middle, right? That's where real intimacy, where the juice of the fruit is. And so, especially in sexual encounters that are brand new, that you don't really know each other, I don't know how good that can be. Again, I'm sort of old school, if you will. I got married. Not like I've never been in love with anybody else. We can talk about that if you want, but I haven't had sex in a very long time outside of my marriage since I've had children. But whatever, I also am a loveologist, and I make really amazing love and sex products. So I always had reason to test those products. And I wrote this other book. I wrote 2 books. One's called Sex That Works, and the book before was Love That Works. And I spent a lot of time really trying to understand how people stay in relationship, because I grew up in a pretty violent divorce. And from a pretty young age, I was pretty aware that the life that other people had in intact families was completely different than my own life. And it was how does that work? Why does that work? I really was always kind of plagued with trying to understand that. And so when I had my own children and had these ideas, this is not working, why, how did I agree to this? I was really committed to not repeating that family history. And that's how I started my business, honestly. I had 4 kids, and I had a lot of pain with sex, because after you have 4 kids, all kinds of things happen to you vaginally that make sex very uncomfortable. In fact, the number one time that many women walk away from sex is when they're postpartum. So that's led me to a lot of study about vaginal health, and I have a couple other businesses where we really focus on that. But because, if your vagina hurts all the time, you're not thinking about sex. I just want to say that's not on the table. And that's not something that women will discuss. Many times they won't even discuss it with their doctor for 5 or 10 years. And again, this is all part of that shame thing, but you can see the layers upon layers of things that happen. We were just talking about these sexual encounters where people are with people in college, right? You were a hero, a sports hero in college, and probably knew other men who were with women who maybe didn't consent fully to what happened to them. There was that whole period of time about consent. That was kind of a big thing maybe 5 or 7 years ago. We don't really talk about it anymore. But, if women are involved in a sexual encounter with a stranger, with somebody they just met or they're drinking with or whatever, and they get into a room and then they feel like there's no way they can get out of that room without giving the man what they want, that creates an erotic injury that can show up years later. Right, where your body tightens up, your vaginal fluids are not flowing because of that previous erotic injury. So, and I wish I could tell you that that's relatively rare, but truthfully, it's crazy common that women hold these erotic injuries that show up in the vaginal microbiome, actually, because I have this company called Vaginal Biome Science. So we do these studies, and that's how I know that's true. But, you know, it's like I said, the most mysterious and complex part of being human is being sexual. Because it's so deeply vulnerable, it's pretty easy to get injured there. You know, to have an injury there that you can't name or that you hide, you know, So
This episode is brought to you by ALLSMITH. If you've been listening for a while, you know this is bigger than just workouts. At ALLSMITH, fitness is the vessel. Life is the true mission. We help people upgrade not just their body, but their routines, their mindset, their energy, their confidence, their relationships, and their overall direction. Some people work with us in person through coaching, through accountability, through movement, through community, and through real human connection. Others choose to work with us online from anywhere in the world through customized programming, lifestyle design, habit building, check-ins, support, and a system built around your actual life. Because the goal isn't perfection. The goal is creating a life that feels aligned, resilient, energized, and truly sustainable. If you feel stuck, if you've been putting yourself absolutely last in all the things in your to-do list, if you want support, structure, accountability, and community that genuinely gives a damn, ALLSMITH might be your next step. Movement is the entry point. Your peak expression is the destination. Head over to allsmith.co or shoot me a message on Instagram at @TheRealBryceSmith or shoot a message to our team at ALLSMITHCO, and let's build something beautiful. I'd never heard that phrase before. That's a very unique term that I think is very important to popularize a little bit and create some education around erotic injury. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
I also appreciate you sharing where your desire to learn more in this arena came from, which it sounds like a little bit from your upbringing. What was it about your upbringing that, you know, ultimately led you down this rabbit hole to explore and understand vaginal pain, to then create products for not just enhanced sexual experiences, but also protecting the vagina and allowing it to heal and allowing the gut microbiome, which we talk about gut microbiome all the time, but you have to be honest, there is a fluid exchange in any sort of sexual experience. And so that it impacts the gut microbiome and also just the acidity of the body, the different chemicals associated with the body, and there can be upstream or downstream effects of that.
100%. And I think really important to clarify right now that you spend a lot of time focused around the gut microbiome, which is literally the center of the wheel. But the microbiome is actually an organ that protects our immune system, and it starts in our sinuses, even our eyes, and our mouth is also part of that microbiome, and all the tissue that goes down to the gut and then exits out the vaginal and rectal opening. All of that is mucous membrane. It's not separated by category. Each different area has its own healthy lactobacilli that protects it. But each area, like, you know, the number of people, 50% of Americans walk around with so much decay in their mouth that kind of oral microbiome it creates all kinds of disease that actually for sure affects your stomach, but also your mental health. It's a precursor to diabetes, but the same can be said about your vaginal and rectal microbiomes too. And so if you're, I think, thinking about your microbiome as a whole is really helpful because everything that's affecting your gut is for sure affecting the other microbiomes in your body. And all the times that you take antibiotics, you're not just killing the microbes in one place in your body, you're killing them everywhere, right? And so, I think that the microbiome is literally the future of medicine. truthfully. And so understanding what's happening vaginally frequently is about your microbiome. In fact, almost always the vaginal pain and symptoms that women have is connected to their microbiome. In just the same ways that you always talk about that with the gut, right? The way that if you're...
Real quickly, Wendy, to bookmark you just for a quick second, I want to make sure we're providing the definition of terms for people, because we had we've had lots of health experts on. We've talked to Raja Deer, the founder of Seed Symbiotic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of terms. Like, people go to the grocery store and they see, let's just say at Sprouts, for example, oh, this is a probiotic. This is good for my gut microbiome. I heard it on a podcast. They hear terms.
Yeah.
But they don't really know what they mean. Can you help define gut microbiome for people just briefly, where something they can kind of tattoo to their mind to better understand the ins and outs of that terminology?
Well, I'm happy to help a little bit here. I specialize more in the vaginal microbiome space, but because they're all connected, I can talk about that at large. And just the industry, which, honestly, just a few years ago, probiotics surpassed antibiotics in volume of sales. So I think that's an encouraging sign for all of us, that people are really becoming conscious of the fact that we want to support this microbiome, whether it's in your mouth or your gut or your vagina, with healthy bacteria. And so probiotics, which is sort of what people might hear about on a podcast that you would do, are healthy lactobacilli that you're either ingesting orally, or we actually recommend, and we have products where you put them into your vagina directly, because it's easiest for them to get there that way. Some people will argue that you can take them orally and then they'll populate through the rectum into the vagina, but I think better to just...
I would say anything that you're taking orally has to survive the acidity of the stomach.
Exactly.
And so that's why we like Seed Symbiotic more often than not, because it's technically a symbiotic, meaning it has a prebiotic first to survive the large or the digestive process. Mm-hmm. And then as a byproduct allows the probiotic to then release into the large intestine. And then obviously the fibrous component, which is what the lactobacilli typically want to consume. If for people's headspace, maybe thinking of it like Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Eating. And so I just want to create that like imagery, almost like a video game for people to better understand. If you're injecting directly into the vaginal canal, or the appropriate space that you would educate,
it's where you want those bacteria to be, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not having to survive the digestive challenge.
Yeah.
And so it makes more sense. It's almost like an injectable peptide, as opposed to taking an oral peptide, just to give people context here.
Yeah. So promoting, but actually one caveat I would say, and it doesn't matter what area we're talking about, is that if the pH of the environment, whether your vaginal environment or your gut or your mouth, is really always off, which is to say that it's a high pH. If you're maintaining a high pH vaginally, then it's really hard for those healthy lactobacilli to thrive, because they only live at a low pH. So I always tell everybody that pH, being able to really monitor and maintain a low pH vaginally, is just in and itself a healthy act, because that is where the healthy bacteria can hang out, and the toxic bacteria like a high pH. So this is why, it's a little different in the gut, but paying attention to pH is really important.
How does somebody get education or measure the pH of their vaginal canal? And are there symptoms associated that might trigger the measurables so they can better understand, or maybe use certain products to enhance the healthy pH system down there so that they can live?
Yeah, so the vaginal microbiome really wants to be at between 3.7 and 4.1 pH. And when it's not there, then you're going to get the overgrowth of bad bacteria. And typically, and this is what seed would tell you, that we anticipate that those bacteria are bacteria like Gardnerella or Prevotella. That's what we associate with vaginal disease frequently. Bacterial vaginosis is what it's termed. But because so many bacteria in a gut microbiome that is unhealthy do actually translate and move down into the vaginal opening through the rectum, you're often finding Enterococcus, E. coli, strep in the vaginal area. That's frequently not even tested for. And all of those bacteria really like a high pH. So you can get vaginal pH strips where you can see what your pH is. You can test it that way. But many women know that they're having that issue because they'll be having a really smelly discharge. That's either gray or white, or some discharge that doesn't smell and look normal to them. That's like one of the key signs that women have. The problem is that the discharges and the smells are easy to confuse because many symptoms look like other symptoms from other conditions. And that's actually one of the reasons so many women get misdiagnosed, even when they go to the doctor, because we frequently don't collect enough data for women and their vaginal health in standard of care right now in women's health.
I'd also say something that's interesting to me, and I'm curious your thoughts here. I'm always looking at like basic and natural human behavior. Oh, something smells weird. Okay, I'm going to go shower. You know, I'm noticing this potential discharge, but I'm not really sure because it got absorbed by whatever garment I'm wearing. So I can't really see the color because I'm typically wearing tight leggings,
right? Some
sort of underwear that you can't really tell. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to go take a shower. I'm going to clean down there with, you know, this soap that I really like. And that soap now has a scent. And then it's like, hey, I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm going on a date tonight, or I've got this thing going on. I'm going to put lotion in and around that area because I just shaved my legs and I don't really want to think about this because this is a problem that can be an issue later. And so most people, I feel like, almost just mask the issue without being genuinely more curious as to like there was a whisper, and they don't really react until that whisper becomes a shout where there's pain or some sort of symptom.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, Bryce. And frequently the things that we do to mask it, like fragrance soaps and fragrance lotions, or like deodorants, all the rage, all body deodorant, right? Like many times those products are what you call hyperosmolar, which means that they strip the vaginal lining and also the vulvar area of the healthiest bacteria, right? And you're actually shedding the cells that are your immune protectors by using products like that. A remarkable percentage of women still douche, even though there's a lot of scientific evidence that douching is a terrible idea, because again, you're stripping the good bacteria away by doing that. You know, I have a really crazy watch video on TikTok about vaginal steaming. You know, women will do so many different things because they are really, really worried about their vaginal odor, but not in a way that teaches them what they can really do to turn that odor into that nice, sweet, musky smell that's their own vaginal smell, right? Like vaginas do smell, but they smell sweet. But if you have overgrowth of bacteria, that's when you get these other smells. But because women typically will think, oh, what's wrong with me? I need to cover this up. They're not actually thinking there's some kind of imbalance here that I can deal with. They're thinking, what products can I use to make this go away? Just like you said. And so like you said, the thing can go on and on for a long time until it is a shout and a scream, because then the complications just keep going until you have to go to the doctor.
This episode of ALLSMITH is brought to you by our friends over at Kalo and their new smart ring. I've been wearing the Kalo smart ring the past few months, and I love how simple it is. It seamlessly fits within my lifestyle and is not invasive into any elements of my life. It tracks my sleep, my movement, my heart rate, my HRV, my stress, my body temperature, and it gives you real awareness around your lifestyle and how it's impacting your recovery and performance. What makes it perfect for me is simply the versatility. I can wear it while coaching, while training, while working, while sleeping, or just living life, and it quietly collects the data in the background. And the best part is it's under $200 and there's zero subscription. No monthly fees, no gimmicks, just clean, affordable health tech. Head over to kalo.com/allsmith and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to get your discount. You can also find it at select Walmart stores and at walmart.com. Now let's get back to the show. For sure. Where I want to pivot the conversation just a little bit, Wendy, is that when I think about this, there's a curiosity in my headspace around ownership and accountability. And some of that is food. Some of that, there's probably a genetic predisposition that causes some of these symptoms. Some of that is habits, exercise, type of soap. I mean, there's an exposure inevitably that's associated with certain things that are causing these symptoms in people. But then you also have to pause for a second. You think like, okay, if you have a sexual partner, you also have to think about their sexual health, the soaps that they use, the fragrances that they use. There's a lot of moving parts here that I don't think get paralysis by analysis when two people are like, hey, we have this feeling, we have this desire, we're going to go do the thing. They're not like going through the checklist of boxes like we are right now. And so then there's a sexual shame associated with it, right? Like in the moment, maybe the danger is turning up the volume into like, oh my gosh, this feels fun. This is this secret thing or whatever the ideology is. But then it's also like on the other side of that, every choice comes with consequences, good, bad, everything in between. And so it's like now what I've seen and observed a little bit is like, oh, it wasn't me that created that issue downstairs. It was the partner that I was with. It was on him or it was on her. And it's like there seems to be this lack of ownership and accountability. And I'm curious your thoughts on this topic of like, how do people take ownership? Let's just say they're in the ages of like 20 to 32 and they're kind of like playing with dating culture. They might be having certain experiences in their genital region and they don't totally conceptually understand the whys or the hows. What are maybe some topics we can discuss that allow people to have the tools in their toolbox to stay safe as they're navigating this growth and experiential journey of sexual connection?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And just as background, I just want to say that a lot of women, even married women, have bad reactions after they have unprotected sex for all kinds of reasons, some understood and some not understood, but the pH of semen is much higher than the healthy pH of the vaginal area. It's only one day of the month when you can get pregnant that the vagina puts out mucus that's at a high number 7, which is what sperm is at all the time, and so a lot of women can react to sex. Or latex, right? Like, and sexual transmitted diseases, right? Like that's a big question in what you were asking, right? Like, how do people come clean if they've had herpes before, or if they have a herpes infection right now? How do we take responsibility and really share those things in a sexual moment with somebody that you're like, hopefully you know, or even don't know? I mean, these are really age-old questions where we kind of just hot potato, throw it back and forth between people. Oh, I didn't do that. And to be fair, many times men might have a sexually transmitted disease and not know it because they don't have the symptoms that women get on the same diseases. So they might have gotten it from some other woman and not even know that they have it, which is also bad for them. But, I think if you're starting to have sex with somebody that you're going to commit to having sex with them for a period of time, that, people get checked, right? Like, so it's all out in the open, and that you're starting from a base where everybody feels like this is a safe thing and I can do it. And then, in terms of talking about products and things that people use, like, even that's a sensitive topic for a lot of people, right? Like, where I mean, I won't have sex with my husband if he doesn't use the wash we make, and it's not like he's out having sex with other women, but hygiene is extremely sexy, and it prevents a lot of things from happening when you go in ahead and just sort of have hygiene in your mind. Clean sex is very sexy sex, and doing it in a way that sort of allows for germs that might be living under the foreskin in a penis, which is a place that germs really like to live, is just exposing somebody that you might really love or care for to deal with something that that goes on for a long time. One infection that comes to mind is ureaplasma. Again, this is something that most men never have a real impact on, and the bacteria hides in the folds. Tiny little bacteria hides in the folds in the penis. So even if you swab the top of the penis, you won't see it because it's deep inside. But if a woman gets ureaplasma, and many, many women have it, it's frequently not tested for because it's not an actual STD or it's not classified like that. But they can have symptoms for a long, long, long time. It's hard to get rid of. You have to use very serious antibiotics to get rid of it. So I think, again, be transparent, be honest, own your health about it, and be willing to have these conversations. Again, if you're meeting somebody behind a bookshelf and it's like everybody's drinking and having a really good time, and it's all very sexy, usually you're not thinking about that kind of thing, right? There's just this erotic energy and you're super turned on. And that, I just want to say, I am in love with being in love. Like, there's no drug better than being turned on by somebody who's listening to you and who thinks that you are beautiful and is interested in what you say. Like, that is the height of that's the best of the best, right? And
I don't disagree with you, but I also think some people don't know what that feeling is, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So their perception becomes that of either what they've created within their imagery from social media, what they've created from past, or their desire for future partners. A lot of people navigate the challenges of porn. So all of these different stories and fantasies and things are living rent-free in between people's minds. Mm-hmm. And they're not realizing, we talk about this in fitness all the time. Like, if you can paint the picture of the actual desire or the beautiful life that you want, we can reverse engineer. Okay, let's create these habits over here and gradually work towards that desire, that goal that you want. Mm-hmm. I think so many people don't know what they don't know. They're throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks. Mm-hmm. And then as a byproduct, they're not having the hard conversation, Wendy. Mm-hmm. They're thinking, I'm in the moment. I don't want to ruin the mood.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ride the wave.
Yeah.
I'm sure the woman possesses, because there's the fear of pregnancy and certain things, she probably possesses more fear than he does. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, on the other side, now there's the conversation, and that takes time to have. Mm-hmm. How do you suggest that people have these types of hard conversations? Because you and I both know unlocking love is typically on the other side of hard conversations, tension, understanding your desires, mm-hmm. my desires, trying to find that compromised middle ground where we're both getting a win mm-hmm. in the quote-unquote negotiation. But more often than not, that doesn't happen. It doesn't feel like normal.
It's so true. Bryce, what I love about you and the way you're asking these questions is that you're really capturing the reality of how it is in the world. And I probably, because I'm older and, I'm not mixing in that culture as much, and I have these probably outdated ideas, that I think are true, mind you. I feel like if people did what I think is true, they'd be happier. They'd get more of what they want. But I don't think that many people think in that way. So I appreciate these kind of mental challenges to so what's the path, right? Like, how do we engineer backwards? And, I guess I would say a couple things. I would say that, know thyself, right? Like, to the extent that we really know what is true for us about anything, right? And that we really trust ourselves, and that we speak to ourselves kindly, right? That we have an inner self-talk mechanism that is supportive and not destructive, right? Like, to that extent, which any single person can manifest for themselves if they really want to work at it, whether it's in working out or the way we eat or getting enough sleep, right? Like, we can all sort of manage our own little world to some extent, and aspire to do more of that, because, nobody can fix you but you. Right? Like,
yeah, very true.
Nobody, and no romantic relationship is the answer to your issues, right? Like, it's a great enhancement when somebody is in love with you or falls for you, right? Like, that energy, that moment where you feel like somebody really gets you, it's like an incredible drug, but it's not like that is the answer to you not feeling that way about yourself. Right? Like, in fact, what's most attractive to somebody else is somebody's magnetism that already has that, right? Like, you can feel when people are in themselves, right? When they really are self-possessed, not in kind of an egocentric way, but like in a just anchored way, right? Like, they're calmer. They can laugh, right? They can, it's not like anxiety, nervousness that's driving them. It's really like something else. So that's one thing I would say, is that anybody listening to you, and I think you probably teach this a million different ways, like, hopefully that they, in sex and in relationships, come to it with that base, or at least trying to have that base. Because what it does then is allow you to be honest. Right? Like, when you own enough of yourself, then you can talk about your injuries. You can talk about the places that feel frightening or concerning to you, and not be ashamed of it. You don't feel like you have to hide it, right? And you can talk about what it is that makes you anxious in engaging in relationship. Like, whatever. This is something I read recently and talked to my daughter about, right? Like, it's like, I'm interested in you, but I don't want to be just like in this kind of inconsistent communication with you that just makes me anxious. Like, if I text you, then you should text me back. Let's just have that agreement, so that way nobody's sort of imagining something else is going on, because so much.
It's so funny you say that. There's such a gamification, and what I observe, or at least what I listen to, is that there's like a social hierarchy. Oh, they texted me. They desire me more. I'm going to make them wait now. And it creates this pseudo game.
I mean, it's not
power.
It makes people anxious, know? And so it's like, but again, if you come and you're a whole person, or at least attempting to be a whole person, and you say to this person that you're interested in, listen, if this is going to be that game for you, I don't have time. It's too distracting for the other things I'm trying to do in my life. You can ask for things like this, right? You can say, sure. I'm interested in you, but I'm not interested in being in, because when you set up relationships in that kind of game way, basically you're just setting up anxiety. Like, the relationship is then anchored in anxiety instead of confidence and trust. And so, but if you have enough of yourself when you're going in, you can say, listen, I really want to be able to trust you. Here's a couple things that work for me. Can you do this?
This episode is supported by ALLSMITH Apparel. And honestly, this isn't just merch. It's a reminder that growth is forged, not found. That discipline is care. That consistency is freedom. That community is medicine. We created ALLSMITH for the people chasing something deeper than just aesthetics. People building businesses, healing, starting over, showing up tired, but showing up anyway. People truly seeking edges. When you wear ALLSMITH, you're not just wearing a logo. You're wearing a mindset, a conversation starter, a flag for people who believe movement, mindset, adversity, and intentional living can help shape a beautiful life. We are ALLSMITHs. Check out our latest apparel drops and our ALLSMITH apparel at allsmith.co. And thank you for helping us build this thing together. And right there, I wanna share with our audience, and I think you'll appreciate this too. That right there is probably the most pivotal moment for people that are listening or taking notes, because it summarizes this. Unexplained expectations are premeditated resentments.
There you go.
And I think it's very difficult sometimes because we feel fearful to set those expectations with the fear that they're going to run. But if they run,
better,
or if they leave, or if they don't want to be an active participant in this A and B relationship, that's information too. It's not a loss. It's not rejection. All it is setting you up for success for the next thing. And so I wanted to share that to really empower people, because going back to your first point, it starts with you. It starts with self-love. Totally. If you're constantly chasing and then being disrespected, at some point you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, what I'm not changing, I am choosing.
Well, exactly. And the thing is that I just want to say that life is really hard now.
It is.
And it's really, really hard if you're young. There's a lot of social contracts that were offered in this country that have not been upheld. Many people feel disenfranchised. Even when you go through all the steps and you have a great degree, it's still really hard to find a good job now, and an entry level, and it's wrong. There, and I could go on and on about why I believe that's true, but it's just suffice to say that it's not easy to be young right now. More young people between the ages of 20 and 32 live with their families than ever before since World War II. Actually, and there's a lot of things that are broken in the context in which all of this is happening, right? So, whatever. There's a lot of reasons that men feel like they have been left out of a lot of development over many, many years, and it's justified. And what I would say is that women's development and women's rights really only work when they're joined by men's development and men's rights, right? Like, it's not like one sex over the other sex. For a long time, and there's still people now calling for, that somehow because women have all this freedom and capacity now, that's ruining the culture. No, it's not ruining the culture. It's just changing it. And so what can we do for men so that they can also step into their highest evolution, their strongest source of esteem and participation in things? So
I think you're spot on, Wendy. And I think the other thing that's important to note here is that there's certain things that men can do at least better than what women can do. And there's just a biological circumstance there. But then there's certain things that women can also do that men either can't do, or women just do it way better.
Yeah.
And I'll just use an example. I'm recently married, and it's like, I can kind of put together the house. The house didn't become a home until my wife got there. The energy and the accents that she's provided, I'm just not interested. I'm looking at survival. I want to make the meat. She makes the sides. And I'm not saying that's the circumstance for everybody, but it's I think it is very honest, to listen to whispers, like I said before they become shouts. And it's like, there's certain things that I'm like, baby, you got it. You're way better than me at that. You go ahead and take the leadership role on that thing, and I'll take this over here. And I think sometimes like the gender roles get misclassified. Like masculinity isn't always leading from the front. Sometimes I'm vocal, I'm out front, and I'm taking charge. And there's other times where it's like, you know what? I fall to the background. This is her thing right now. She's going to go do the thing.
Yeah, listen,
go ahead.
Leading can be a forward thing, but also supporting, really truly supporting 100%. And having someone's back is a powerful leadership, right?
Yes.
You know, and that is literally the safety mechanism that lets somebody be super vulnerable with you, that lets them really expose their heart and makes them want you sexually. Right? Like, I mean, honestly, even if you ask somebody in a work setting, what is it that's most important to you? And everybody would tell you security, right? Like that is what we are all really longing for. So leading from behind, really supporting people is like maybe even more powerful than being out in front. And
yeah, you're spot on. It's a very interesting ideology for sure, because from my observation, you know, there's this growth of the feminine movement. Like you said, women are empowered. They're very good at so many things. They're taking on leadership roles. There's a ton of evolution there that's different from historical track record. And then over here, it's almost like men are either toxically masculine, or all of a sudden they're just kind of like soft and beta.
We haven't done the work that we need to do for boys. And I had 2 sons. I told you I lost one son, but I still have a son. But I raised 2 boys. And you know, and I remember reading a book called The Wonder of Boys when they were small, which is a wonderful book. It taught me so much about my husband. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, damn. Like all these years I'd missed this. And then when I was trying to raise my sons, it was like, you know, for me, you can hear I'm a talker. And one of the first lessons was just use less words. Just like be succinct, you know, a single message, they'll get it, you know? And meanwhile, I'm like expounding, and they're like, please, I'm walking away now, you know? So I learned a lot in that book about men, but, you know, over the years as they were growing up and in their teens, it was so clear to me in this screaming way that we were not helping boys and teen boys really make the most out of what this culture had to offer. And that's how this toxic masculinity, you know, it's like for all the things that we did to really help Title IX women compete and do all these things, that was not matched with an effort for men, because there was somehow this presumption that, well, men already have everything. Why would we help them? But that's ridiculous, right? We never like really gave them many boys, for reasons that we do understand, and the education system's currently a total fucked up mess now, but we never really taught boys how to learn in school. You know, like they don't learn the way girls learn, and for many boys it was just a non-starter, you know? So that's one place where we really did fail boys, and it's documented, you know?
Can I share one little thought real quick that associates with what you're saying? In my opinion, the education taught boys and later men that the outcome is the most important thing. It doesn't matter about the learning process, doesn't matter about who you become as a man. The outcome matters. Did you get an A or did you get a B? And if you got an A, now you're going to be romanticized, validated, your ego is going to be massaged. If you got a B or a C or a D, it's like now you're going to be pushed to the side. You're not good enough. Go figure out how to get better. And so to translate or bridge that to the sexual components, like I understand and my logic aligns with like, hey, the middle ground of a sexual experience, foreplay, really romanticizing a woman, making sure she feels safe, listening, seeking to understand, being on the curbside rather than on the inside of the step, making sure if anything happens, she's protected, having those conversations and listening. But then you fast forward and you're like, well, the education system didn't teach us this. When there's a fight, there's some sort of talk around providing, protecting sexual performance that gets weaponized. So then as a byproduct, I'm noticing men are just being angry. Yeah. And then as a byproduct, they're just misbehaving. Like, you know what? We have access to swipe culture and all these things. Middle finger to the system. We're just going to misbehave until you actually create a safe space for us to listen. I don't agree with that either. It's just an observation that I'm noticing.
I think you're absolutely right. It's alarming. It's alarming, and it's not good for them, and it's not good for anybody else.
100%. It's an adult tantrum.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And you know, what does it take for someone to, like, I think the question I'm always asking myself is, how do we change? Like, what happens when somebody wants to change, right? Like, nobody can change you. That has to be an inside job. You have to decide that what you're doing is not functional, that you're not happy with the results of your life. And so then you can ask yourself, what could I do differently, right? Like, how could this function better? You know, but it's hard because a lot of people won't change. You know, a lot of
here's what I think is going to help men change, and we're seeing it firsthand. Maybe I'm wrong here, maybe I'm biased because it's something that we do and we provide with ALLSMITH. But I notice that when women get together, it's like, Wendy, how are you? Like, what's your deepest fear? What's keeping you up at night? How are your relationships? How's your food? How's your health?
Yeah.
There's real conversation amongst women. With men, it's like, hey, did you see the game last night?
Yeah.
How you feeling? Let's grab another beer. It's surface level bullshit. However, what we're starting to experience is that sensations or experiences unlock depth in men. And so what I'm seeing is through sauna and cold plunge, through golf, through fireside chats, through workouts, we're seeing the growth and evolution of more men's groups, more founders clubs. However, it takes active participation. It typically takes some sort of monetary or time skin in the game to be a part of these groups. But I feel like men are so resistant to this. So like without that skin in the game, they're just like, fuck it, I'll figure it out. I'll watch a podcast or read a book. I got this. And women are more active participants, I would say. They comment on each other's photos. They want to love on each other. Men are like, oh, I saw it, but then they don't really want to be like, oh, I gave that photo a love or something. I think men need to become more active participants. And with the exposure of men's groups, founders clubs, different things where they have the option to do so, my hope is in the next decade, men kind of take a cannonball into that space to unlock reservoirs of emotion to better connect so they don't feel so isolated and lonely, which then leads to the porn, the alcohol, the womanism or the womanizing and like poor habits, in my opinion.
So I really appreciate you bringing that up, Bryce. And here's what I would say, that we're working against biology because we know that the brain structure of men and women and boys and girls are different, right? And one actually it lends itself more to that kind of like relating, right? Like the female brain has more of that cross between left and right brain than the male brain. And we also know that boys are frequently, when they're small, like, oh no, don't cry. Boys don't cry, right? Like we train little boys to not feel instead of training them to feel what they're feeling and knowing how to talk about those feelings. My son actually used to come home from high school and be like, why does no one ever talk about what's going on for them? Because I like really literally trained my boys to feel and to talk about their feelings. And they would exclaim to me that no one else had that capacity. Why? Because they're lost in this gaming structure or whatever.
This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Bubs Naturals. Look, wellness can get noisy. There's tons of conflicting information out there. A million supplements, a million opinions. But what I truly appreciate about Bubs is that they keep things simple. Hydration, collagen, and creatine. Real tools that support real people trying to perform better, recover better, and simply show up better for their life. I use their products consistently, whether it's hydration after training, collagen to support recovery, or creatine for performance, strength, brain health, and longevity. These are staples in my routine. But what I really respect is the mission behind the brand. Bubs truly honors legacy, adventure, service, and living life fully. If you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, a parent, a weekend warrior, or somebody truly trying to feel a little bit more human in your body, give them a look. Use code ALLSMITH to support your wellness, your journey, and support what we're building here with the ALLSMITH podcast. Because feeling better isn't just about vanity, it's about capacity. And capacity changes lives. Make the rest of your life the best of your life. It's so interesting you say that. I've always felt that way because I ask people, hey, how are you? Good, you? Yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're okay over here. We're struggling there. Here's some of the wins. Here's some of the areas of losses or constructive criticism. But then you could kind of tell from a body language perspective, people are like, why are you telling me all this? You're dumping your shit on me. And then all of a sudden I'm not feeling safe. But you asked me the question and I honestly answered it. And now in my brain, I'm creating this like, fuck off. Next time you ask me, I'm just going to be like, I'm good, man, whatever. And I'm going to pick my audience appropriately when I'm going to honestly answer. It's only going to be with the people that genuinely want to engage. It's tough.
So it's like so many things, right? Because partly it's like, if you don't know how, if you don't know that in yourself, then you don't even know where the response is, right? Like they, and then it's interesting, right? Because then it becomes this, oh, you're dumping on me, because they have no way to process, because they're already holding all this unprocessed emotion in them. And
Such a great point.
And when we have a lot of unprocessed emotion, which I think is true for a lot of men, especially young men, what it becomes is anger. Right? Like anger is not actually a primary emotion. It's actually the emotion that shields us from our emotions. So I know my father was a rageaholic. You asked me what happened to me as a child that made me want to do all the things I did and start this love company and really want to understand what it is that makes people stay. I grew up with a rageaholic who used to beat me as a child. So I know what anger can do in men, personally. And I'm sure many women listening would say that they also know that. But, it's like, even till the very end when my dad was dying and I'm like trying to let him have the space to emote. And he was so old by then, right? He just didn't have the skills, so, and even, with my son now, he's 30 years old and, and I it's rare when I get those emotions from him. I'm always kind of opening the door and leaving a space. And I try to stop talking so that he can find that space. But, it's like giving people permission to actually wonder about what's inside of them and giving them some language, which we should be doing for boys at a much younger age, to actually express something and affirming that behavior so that it feels normal to them, right? Those are things that we can all do more of every day. But the easy thing to do is just judge and say, oh, I'm not safe here, but I don't know. I think if we could try, it's hard to do, to be slightly more compassionate about the anger that we're seeing, that we know that anger is not really the truth of those people, but that there's some things underneath that anger that they really need support to get to know. And to have the ability to say. And that's like a massive cultural change. But bringing it back to sex, which is what you wanted to talk about this whole time, and we've been talking about all these other interesting things, like in a sexual encounter, you know, especially one where people have agreed they're going to build a trusting relationship, right? Where they're not playing games, right? Even if they make all those really positive agreements, you know, that they still have a lot of learning to do, right? To actually learn, what is this that I'm feeling? What is this uneasiness or this fear in my belly, right? That's coming up in my gut. And can they just like have the space with whoever they're with to say it out loud? I don't know exactly what this is, but I don't feel good right now. You know, like maybe they could just say that. And then somebody could ask a question like, does it feel like butterflies? Does it feel like a tightness? Where do you feel it in your body, right? Like you just start to give them some cues so that they can start to explore it a little bit, you know, and then like taking that deeper into sexual relationships, right? Like, because you've given them that space, then you would hope, and I think it's true, that they would then have more space for their partner, where they would be like, well, does this feel good to you? You know, what do you know about your body? How does pleasure happen for you? Right? Like where we start to ask her like really visceral questions, the same kinds of visceral questions you ask in CrossFit, right? Like if I was in a CrossFit gym with you, you would be like, oh, you thought you were strong, Wendy, but no, actually you're not. How does this feel when you do this? And then I'd be like, God, this feels scary because I don't feel like I can hold my shoulder, right? Like it's really like if we can start to live in our body more, right? That is like where sex is amazing, when we're actually really in our body and not in some kind of shit in our head that's living rent free, like you said, right? But like actually feeling our body, that's where our emotions live, right? And so if we just make more room for people to have that, then they reciprocate by asking, well, how does your body feel right now? Right? Like if you're penetrating a woman and she hasn't had an orgasm yet, she's going to be really tight and really dry, because a clitoral orgasm like engorges the vagina, right? Like all this blood goes rushing up to the back of the vagina where there is actually a G-spot, and then she's ready to receive penetration. But the number of women who don't know that and get penetrated before they're even close to ready, because he's trying to perform, he's trying to prove he can do it, right? And then she's like all tight and she's not really enjoying it. And so if they were slowing it down and they were asking each other about their body, like, what feels good to you? Do you like this? Do you like when I go down on you like this? What feels good, right? And then maybe she would have the courage to say, well, I'm afraid I smell bad there. And he would be like, no, but like maybe we should like take this vaginal microbiome test and see if there's some weird bacteria hanging out there, you know? I mean, it's like none of this is rocket science, and yet it all takes a lot of practice to actually really live into the tenderness of our humanity. Right? Like
you verbalized that perfectly. Leaning into the tenderness of our humanity. What I was going to say is we're just granting people the permission to be more human. Mm-hmm. It's almost like this false expectation of reality.
Ultimately, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really good sex is like where it's almost like it's like a meta way of being human, because when you're so deeply in your body that you can surrender the control of it, right? Like that's the only way you can have an orgasm, right? Is like if you're not like thinking about what do I look like, what do I smell like, but you're actually just surrendering your body to the experience of feeling and sensation, then your body knows how to have an orgasm, you know? But if you're driving with your brain, like that's like like you can't orgasm when you're full of anxiety.
Wow, this is unlocking some headspace for me. When my mom passed, I met this amazing gentleman and brought him on as originally my therapist. Then he became my healer, my business coach. Now he's just like part of our ALLSMITH team, and I appreciate him so much. His name is Justin. And when I first started with him, he's like, Bryce, you're trying to out-logic everything. You're trying to fucking your whole life is right angles. You're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole and think through everything, have the like escape plan, have the setup plan, da-da-da. And he's like, that allowed you to like be successful in athletics, that allows you to be successful in business, that doesn't allow you to be successful in the human experience. And so what we've been working on the last few years is like, originally it was like deconstructing all the different tabs that were open in my head, and then working my way down to my heart. And then I went through an emotional season where I was feeling a lot, I was crying a lot, I was laughing a lot, and I was really like in my feels. And then that translated down towards where we're at right now, which is navigating the understanding of my gut. And what he's always said is, hey, when your head, your heart, and your soul are in alignment, you create this vibration where you're no longer chasing. You start to learn the art of attractiveness, where you start to meet great people. You start to connect in a way that is an energetic thing that's a little bit different. It's more in alignment with nature. It's less in alignment with transactional, weird human behavior. And that's hard to undo when you're coming from the land of entrepreneurship or professional athletics. And so anyway, the point that I'm hearing from you is like, that feeling we have as children, it's innately there. And then society deconstructs it. It's like, oh, I go to school, I have to learn that this person is a teacher, so they go in this category. This person is a doctor, they go in this category. These are words and phrases that I know, so they go there. These feelings, they're not acceptable. When I do those, I don't get validation or love from the world, so I'm going to put those things away. When I do these things, I get rewards. And so it comes down to what I described with you earlier, which is human nature is, if I have incentive, I can then backtrack and create behavior. And it's a very interesting dichotomy because that behavior is not always in alignment with the outcome. It's in alignment with the small, short-term variables of feedback that we receive. I do this thing, I got this. But it completely mitigates delayed gratification. And I would describe the female orgasm a little bit in some ways as delayed gratification. It's not just penetration, hit the jackpot, she has the thing. It's like, I created safety, I created connection, I created buy-in. She actively participated back. Now we created this loving unity in the form of like an infinity sign where I push, she pulls, she pushes, I pull. Now there's a natural ping pong taking place. And then as a byproduct based on that trust and that unity, it creates the most human experience, which is, as you described, orgasm. And so it sounds to me that there just is seemingly a disconnect of like, he's trying to perform, she's trying to surrender. And inevitably there's a tension there until all of the external walls seemingly can get dropped for a moment where you can just have this A and B energetic connection and conversation to share your deepest insecurities, have an honest conversation, and then playfully be like, hey, we got somewhere today. We don't have it all figured out, but we're moving the needle in the right direction. And then as a byproduct, we're going to continue to be in practice. We're not going to be in pursuit of outcome. What are your thoughts on that storytelling, I guess?
So I think it's super interesting, and I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and kind of sharing your own process. And I'm really glad you met this guy who helped you become more human, right? Like really kind of get out of like this rationalization and this rumination, honestly, is what it turns into, of constantly trying to protect everything. And I feel like a lot of people live in that space. I just want to say that that's a really common experience that a lot of people have, because whatever, like I said, what we want most is to be secure. So we're constantly trying to like game for our security, and we think we can somehow control that in our head, right? In the way that you perfectly described. And that it doesn't really work in human relationships. And I would even say that I don't know that it works in business either. You know, I'm a very unique businesswoman, I just want to say, and I'm a big believer that greatness cannot be planned. You know, that's a book actually that some computer scientist wrote out of Austin, Texas, which is a beautiful book. You can get it on Amazon. I think you would love it, actually.
Also, just to note, I thought that at the start of entrepreneurship. We're coming up on 2 years in October. And I so wholeheartedly just grabbed onto what you said, because you're so right.
Yeah, it's so.
But I didn't know what I didn't know until I embarked on the experience.
Like you just show up with your whole body, and then you interact with what the world is bringing to you. I've been at it for like 25 years. I've started 4 businesses and a couple of nonprofits as well. They haven't all succeeded, but they all taught me some really important things. And I'm a goddess worshiper, and so which is a Hindu tradition. And what they always tell you, one of the golden rule in that tradition is to renounce the fruit of your labor. So you have the right to action in the world, but you don't have the right to the fruit of that action. And if you think about that for a second, in any place in life, right, like we can show up, but we don't actually get the guarantee of what we want. And to the extent, like a lot of entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs, will start the game by saying, what's my exit? It's like, what the fuck? What problem are you solving? Like, forget about your exit. Like, how are you going to change something and be of service? That's the question. But, coming back to sort of this long story you told, what I would tell you is 3 things. I wrote this in a book. It's called Love That Works. There's not very many copies left, but I think you can get it on Kindle still. But the premise of the book is this, that like we said a little bit ago, that how we think, right, this is the Buddha who said this, how we think is who we are. And so if you're thinking bad things about yourself all the time, nothing is going to break through that, right? And if you're thinking bad things about your relationship all the time, even if you don't say those things out loud, your partner knows it, right? So you're basically living in a swamp. Your brain is a swamp, and you can't build anything good, a business, a relationship, good sex, when your brain is a swamp. So that's like the base, that's the foundation. Then how you communicate, and you've been talking a lot, Bryce, about this, about like, can you ask questions? Can you really create space where you can listen, right? That's actually the air in the relationship or the endeavor, right? Like that's like can you breathe there is essentially the question, right? And if you never self-disclose, right? Like if your partner is never telling you what's really going on for them, then what's the quality of the air? Right? Like the air is about like movement, like freedom, that you can actually represent who you are, right? The water in the relationship is how you show up. So can you be at someone's back? Like we were talking about earlier, right? Can you like really lead from behind and support somebody, even if it's not going your way? Can you still show up? Maybe can you watch a chick flick, even if you don't want to? Can you like pick up your socks and put them in the laundry bin because she keeps asking you, right? Can you like pick up dinner, even if it's out of your way, right? Like it's small things. It's different things for everybody. But like that's like, if there's no water that comes in every now and again, then you don't feel safe. Right? So the first thing is, how do you think? How do you communicate? How do you show up? And then if all of those things are working, then you have this amazing ground to build a fire, which is that sexual intimacy and that really deep uncovering of the mystery of like what it is that turns you up, right? Like what it is that connects you to other people. But if you don't have all those other pieces, like you're not going to be able to make a fire that works, period.
Totally true. The kindling in the firewood's not present. I want to jump real quickly to maybe people that have been in relationships for a while or been in marriages for a while and they're experiencing levels of stagnation. You mentioned a little bit postpartum, what some of the experiences are that women go through. And I'm curious because we've seen this time and time again, especially in like the Hollywood culture, where you can love someone and you can stop desiring them. Why do you think that happens?
So many good answers to that question. I think it's actually the most classic in long-term relationships, right? That there's even people now, Esther Perel talks about an expiration date on relationships. And there's a big question about whether monogamy is even a legitimate form of relationship over time. That many animals are not even monogamous, right? Like there's a few that are. And, you know, I like I said, I've been at it for like over 4 decades. And I'm not going to tell you that I have some, you know, like princess, like, you know, ever after kind of like joyful story. Truth is, my marriage is really very challenging in a lot of different ways. Happily, the sexual part of our relationship was relatively functional, which is to say that we have some kind of spark thing that happens, but that we each had to develop ourselves in order for that to keep growing, right? Like, it's not like it was, oh, so amazing at the beginning, and then it's just been, it's like at the beginning it wasn't that good, honestly. And so, you know, there's an evolution to making love with somebody, just there, like there is to having intimacy with them in a marriage over time. And I think several things happen over time. One is that we think we know the person that we're with, and we stop really looking with curiosity with who are they now, who are they becoming. Maybe partly because they're not disclosing who they are to you anymore, because they don't feel safe, right? Like there's all kinds of things that happen in those interactions about showing up for people and communicating. And usually when relationships break, those are the places they break. Or like I said, even more fundamentally, if you're constantly having bad thoughts about your partner and you're not actually doing the work to fight about that shit, then it's just poisoning the well constantly. Yeah. So like those pieces that I was telling you about, this ecology, really are the thing that impacts your ability to have sex over time. The other thing is like, are you bringing the shame or whatever it is that you maybe got from some religious thing or your own discomfort with your own body into your sexual relationship over time? You know, there's this concept, well, 2 things that I think are important. One is that a lot of people have sex of leftovers, which is to say that there's a lot of things that they won't experiment with or try. They won't let anybody touch them on the anus. They won't let anybody finger them in a certain way. They won't, like, you know, whatever. It's like they think they know what sex is. And especially if you feel like you're trying to recreate some pleasurable experience and you try to do it the same way all the time, that's common too. But then, of course, it doesn't work, right? So it's like if you've lost your ability to be curious, actually in the relationship writ large, then it's going to be really hard for you to be curious sexually also, right? If you have never had access to, or you feel like your fantasy life is so shameful, and we kind of talked really around pornography, but given that pornography is 60% of the internet and pretty much nobody's untouched by it, you know, there's a lot of pornography that is fiction, but because it's so rampantly available, like somehow men have come to believe that women want to be choked. I just want to say that is not true. That's fiction, you know, and in fact, many women will stop dating because they don't feel like it's safe. But, you know, I think erotic fantasy is great. I really like reading erotica rather than watching it personally. And I am super turned on by all kinds of really weird surrender, domination things that I would never actually want to do in a dungeon, but that really turns me up. So if you take that fantasy into 3D, it's much more risky than just having it in your head. And I've never been bold enough to do that, although there's days where I think...
I want to touch on a couple things. You brought up some really good points there. First and foremost, I think conflict is a team sport for mutual understanding. And so it's like whether it's...
There's safe ways to do it, and there's unsafe ways to have conflict.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
So you have
But I think it's inevitably going to exist.
You know?
Yeah, I hear you. I also just think conflict is inevitably going to exist when you spend enough time around somebody, especially with a partner. Hey, you did this, I did that, here's why. But there's a misunderstanding in the messy middle somewhere. And then I think there's a unique component too where I love the line from Tony Robbins, which is exchange expectation for appreciation, your world changes forever. And then that synergistically links with be more curious than judgmental. And the reason why I point these things out is that
Totally.
let's just say people maintain a level of curiosity and they're feeling a certain way. They have a high risk tolerance. They feel comfortable with said person. So they're going to embark on some sort of maybe not normal behavior in the bedroom. And then all of a sudden it unlocks a shock maybe from their partner. Like, hey, where'd you see that? Where'd you learn that? How did that get unlocked? And oftentimes it seems like, that topic doesn't get discussed outside of the bedroom. It's one of those things that just gets kind of like put away. And I think you're spot on. Like if you want to exchange expectation for appreciation, there has to be some sort of understanding. And so I want to unpack that a little bit with you because I feel like curiosity sometimes can be misunderstood and then create some sort of weaponized, where did you see that? What's going on? Why did you think to do that?
Yeah, because
blah, blah, blah.
Again, that's like a security thing with yourself, right? Like if we don't trust what our partner is, right? Like if we can't appreciate them for who they are and it makes us insecure, then that's how you're going to respond, right? Mm-hmm. And also I feel like one thing that's really misunderstood in long-term relationships is that because so many people are really afraid of conflict, one person in the relationship will give up a lot of things about themselves to become more like the other person to avoid conflict. And it's a terrible idea because that is like our differences is what makes us sexy with each other. So if you sort of completely vanillize yourself, right? Like so that you won't, you avoid conflict, that juice of that conflict is also what makes you want them, right? And so you lose that, that energetic spark if you refuse to be yourself and stand up for your differences. And the truth is that I couldn't be more different than my husband, honestly. Like if you were to interview him, you'd be like, what, you're married to Wendy? Like how are you doing that for such a long time? Like you just wouldn't get it. He's a psychiatrist. He's very quiet, very thoughtful. And so we play very different roles with each other, and I feel like I've become more thoughtful over time. And I think he's learned to emote more over time by being together over all this years. But he's still really much more of a thinker than I am. And I'm much more of a feeler than he is. And we still disagree about pretty much all the things we disagreed about 40 years ago. Like, it's not like I gave that up for him, I think we allow each other a lot of space to grow into the people we want to be. And what I would tell you is that a healthy relationship, its whole purpose is to create safe space for each person to become themselves. That is the whole purpose of loving somebody, right? And so appreciating them is kind of core to that premise. But if the relationship just is trying to make somebody smaller, right? For a long time, I didn't succeed very much in my business because I thought, if I'm more successful than my husband, that would be bad. I didn't feel safe that I could really go out and be big in the world. And then finally, I don't know, I was in my 40s. I'm like, this is bullshit. Of course I can, But it took me a long time to learn that. It wasn't like he was doing that. Maybe he was doing it in some ways. But finally one day I'm just like, I can't be small for you. I have to do what I'm going to do. And it was good because it made him be the first parent with the kids for many years, when I was traveling or doing whatever I was doing. But
it was role reversal based on societal norms in a season. The world says that, a father being at home during this time is diminishing and blah, blah. It's it's a story we've told ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not reality. There's certain seasons of life where she's going to have to leave the tribe and go do things. And there's certain seasons of life where he's going to have to do that. And it's
exactly.
When you diminish the ego and you have an understanding, that's not to say ego's bad. It's just there's certain times where it should be loud and then certain times it should be soft. Going back to what we talked about, you can lead from the front, but you can also lead from the back.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, I think we've touched on some of those really cool things, which I think is important. I wanna pick your brain on this topic.
So I do
Wendy.
want to tell you one other thing about your other question,
Sure.
though.
Sure.
So one thing is this leftover sex, where people aren't really willing to like explore and try new things, and then sex becomes stale. But partly it's probably mirrored in the ways in which they're not really sharing themselves in other ways in their relationship, right? So, but the other thing that I think is even more destructive is what you had said earlier, the ways that people play games, but that becomes much more entrenched in long-term relationships, of the game of who wants who more, right? And so that those differing desires is classic, and we always think that it's the woman who doesn't want to have sex as much as the man. I mean, classically, that's the way we tell that story, but I've seen it go both ways, honestly. But in any case, when you're rejected sexually because the other person's desire doesn't match yours, it's such a hurtful thing. It creates so much like pain and suffering and self-doubt, and it can destroy a marriage, honestly, quicker than almost anything. So I just want to say that even though it seems like the person who's saying no is more powerful than the person who's being said no to, what I would say is that no one is empowered in that situation. And so to the extent that you can take or reduce your own personal strife about being rejected and or being the one who's rejecting, and really try to live in the other person's shoes for a minute, right? Like, how would that be for you? And start to get into what it is about desire that's hard for you, right? Like, it could be that they're having vaginal pain all the time. Could be that he's so worried about his performance, he doesn't want to do it anymore, right? Like, it's like, or it could be that, like, he has all these feelings about what's happening to him in some other part of his life that he's never been able to express, or vice versa, right? Like, but really being able to, like, unpack that dilemma of, like, who's being rejected more is so crucial to stay in a relationship. And really even at the beginning, but typically that happens certainly within the first 7 years of a long-term relationship. And I've been on both sides of that fence, and I just want to say that neither side is good, So try to be
I appreciate
gentle.
you sharing that, because it's a very common thing that I think a lot of people experience.
Yeah, it's the most common of all things. And I think it's the single, because it's so hurtful to not be wanted in that way. It's so hurtful, and when people are silent about it, or like, and you already maybe have your own judgments about yourself and insecurities, like, you can't stay in that. It's too painful to stay. And so really, like, upping your game in disclosure around those topics and showing up for people, really being there and listening, is kind of the only way out.
So such awesome advice for people. Mm-hmm. Wendy, does familiarity kill attraction?
Well, I'm at it for 43 years, right? So I would tell you no. But partly that's because I was gifted a relationship that helped me to really get into and live out some of the fantasy stuff that I'd always been so ashamed of and wasn't able to access myself. And so I met this person which was so weird because I was a loveologist for decades by then, who really kind of created a safe space for me to, like, allow myself to think about what was really, like, in the back of my head for so many years. And it literally rocket charged my sexual life. But that was work that I did in me, right? That wasn't like, so it's like, I just think if each person is really continuously looking to grow their erotic life and understand themselves as an erotic human being, then it's like the sky's the limit. I'm having way different sex right now than I had 3 years ago.
But that's it right there. That's what I want to point out. Does familiarity kill attraction? What I see and what I hear just from my point of view, my father said 3 hours before he passed, he said, always be dating. And he wasn't just talking about like, hey, you always chase women. He wasn't talking about that. He meant always fostering meaningful relationships, getting to know people in every season of their life. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that you and your husband have disclosed, hey, this is what I'm desiring, this is something that we've not explored yet, you're changing the flavor of your experience. And if I were to relate that to food, if you eat chicken, rice, and broccoli bland every day, eventually you're like, I don't want to fucking eat chicken, rice, and broccoli.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, let's try this sauce. Let's try this seasoning. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a completely different dish.
Yeah.
It's like you try a couple new things.
And steak every now and again, or fish.
Exactly.
Your protein,
Exactly. And so that's the point that I'm making, is that like within your experience, it sounds to me that like, okay, familiarity doesn't have to be a different person.
No, exactly.
It can be a different experience. It could be a different date. It could be a different communication strategy, different food, different whatever.
So I have this big collection of erotic books, and it took me decades, but like now my husband reads this erotica to me before we have sex. That's like what we do. And I let him pick any page, because usually it's just a couple pages we read before it's like enough. And like a long time ago, years ago, decades ago even, we used to watch like the Green Door, or like some really old porn that we would have to watch on this little like weird VHS thing that we had at the bottom of the bed. So we've tried different things like that. I make really amazing love oil, which actually is an incredible thing. It's a really great learning tool. It was the very first product I ever made. And when I found this bottle by accident, it was the very beginning of Good Clean Love. And I was desperate for something because sex hurt all the time, and I didn't want to get divorced. Like I told you, I was really trying not to repeat my parents. And I needed something desperately at that time after I had my fourth kid. So I found this bottle of love oil in this little store, like one-off, that we were clearancing out. And we had the most amazing sex with this love oil. And I thought, damn, look at us. This, like, we're like, I was like maybe 35 at the time. And I'm thinking, we have like really found our juju again, Mm-hmm. And then the love oil's gone, and I'm like, shit, it was the love oil. And so I became determined to find out how, like I searched everywhere to get something like that. I literally bought millions of products to try to recreate that. Finally, I find the woman who made it in her little cottage in Eugene. I'm like, what is the deal on this stuff? How did you do it? And so anyway, that's how I started Good Clean Love. And so we're just brought those love oils back. But how they work is that they're therapeutic grade essential oils. And they work because this is also a biomatch thing, because scent is unique to each of us, especially if you're using essential oils. If you're using fragrances, those are fixed scents, and they'll smell the same on everyone. So that's why they're less interesting, and also they're not good for your brain chemistry. But essential oils actually are like messengers that go from your nose into your olfactory bulb, which is co-located with your limbic brain, and your limbic brain is where you experience emotion, memory, and arousal. So God really planned this well for us. And so you can basically create a memory pathway to arousal. So when you can't quite find desire, you can just wake up arousal through your nose. And because you put that oil in everywhere that's erotic, at your neck, inside of your thighs, in your upper arm, your chest, right? You have so many erogenous zones that are not just your genitals. And you smell different in all those places, right? So then so basically you're giving your nose and your limbic brain all this information to process about arousal, about getting turned on. And also, any body part slippery is way sexier than that same body part dry. Trust me on that. And any two people that use the same love oil create a scent that's unique to the two of them, because you smell different than your wife, and together you create a scent that isn't in the bottle, right? Like it's your pheromones, her pheromones, and the oil that's like making this scent. So I pretty much never go anywhere without love oil. Even when we don't have it on the website, I personally make it myself. And it's
I need to get some of this stuff. This sounds great. Because
I'll send you some. It's like
when my
such
father
a game
passed,
changer. Yeah.
When my father passed, as a kid, my dad used to shave, and like I didn't have any facial hair as a kid, so I would take like the plastic push pop, and he would put like shaving cream on me, and I would like kind of copy him, rinse it off, copy, and then right at the very end, he would go, "Hey, you want some foo-foo juice?" And I'd be like, "Sure." And it was just his form of cologne. He put it on my inner arm, a little bit on my neck, a little bit. And so when he passed, me and my brother and my sister looked at each other like, "Hey, are there any things that you guys like really want?" And I was like, "I want Dad's cologne collection." And so to this day, like scent is really funny. Crazy. And then maybe like the second date that I ever had with my wife, I gave her a hug, and I think she kissed me on the neck, and she goes, "I love the way you stink." And it was just like a funny, cute little thing that we've like maintained in our relationship, which is like, "Hey, I love the way you smell," but the way she said like, "I love the way you stink," always resonated. And so there's certain scents that we have within our relationship that I appreciate. So I'd love to
I'm gonna
tinker with the love oil, because that's a special thing that I think so many people don't pay attention to smell.
No, actually,
and I know like parabens and things aren't the best, but
Bryce, it's the most primary sense we have when it comes to sexual arousal. We think it's all these other things, but actually our sense of smell, it helps us determine if somebody's compatible with us, right? Like in the old days, people kissed just to know if they were compatible, because if you're too similar genetically, you won't smell good to each other, and there's just no fix for that. It's a bad reproduction.
Let me ask you this, something that's coming to mind that I think is so fucked up is this whole concept of birth control, because it's like what I've seen and heard is that like, hey, when a woman's on birth control, she might be attracted to this person, and then, you know, when she goes off birth control, the pheromones change.
Yeah, no, it does change your sense of smell, and it's actually really unfortunate for the people it happens to, because like I said, there's no fix for it, but which is why you for sure. And also when men wear colognes, with the exception of your dad probably, but you can't really smell them, right? Because you're getting, if you like a man who's wearing Axe, like all you smell is Axe, right? You can't really smell him. And so that's why these love oils are so amazing and powerful, because the scent it creates is a heightened sense of you. You know, but yeah, I've read stories like that about like where women who can no longer be attracted after they come off birth control. That's a real thing.
Interesting. You want a little pro tip? And the timing of this is super cool. So on the other side of our conversation today, we're like 5 to 7 days out of the year, we just say, screw it. We pack up the car, we go escape up into the mountains, up into the Mammoth area. And if you wear cologne or anything up there, the mosquitoes will destroy you. Yeah. And so a little pro tip, if you're getting to know somebody, take them camping. Yeah. Because then inevitably you're going to get their natural pheromones. You're going to see them in a relatively vulnerable space, both men and women.
Totally.
And it is a space where I took my wife for the first time last year, and she was all nervous and not really knowing what to expect. And this year she was literally like begging, like, please, can we get a date on the calendar? That was so fun. I want to go back. And so a little pro tip for people that are navigating the experiences of pheromones or scents, like just go get lost in nature, and you'll form a better understanding.
Not only that, but like when you see people in nature, right? Like there's a way that you know, like how people settle into the natural world can tell you more about them than anything they would say.
So true.
You know? And so, yeah, if people have never been exposed, like you were saying, your wife, you know, but is she open, or is it like everything kind of a repulsion, right? Like, you know, and I mean, I'm not judging people that are repulsed by nature, but that does tell you a lot about how their defenses are really, really heightened, you know? So yeah, I think for sure be in nature wherever you can, or swim in the Pacific Ocean, or something really like earthy that anchors you.
For sure.
Because honestly, like, we started about sex and we should finish about sex, because here's what I would tell you about really amazing sex, is that there is no other act you can participate in that will completely reset your emotional, mental, and psychological and spiritual centers the way sex can, orgasm specifically. And it like literally brings down the nervous system kind of heightened like mania that many of us live with, unlike anything else you can do. Like even meditation, like all the things that you can practice, nothing gets to it in the way that orgasm does. And truthfully, like, to share that experience with somebody that you're learning to love it's the most bonding thing you can do, and also sort of opens up your relationship to something much bigger than your relationship to them, which is your relationship to the divine. Because that is what you touch into in those moments. And if you're smart, you should offer that up to the divine, because then you'll keep getting more of it. So, yeah, I'd be dead, honestly, if I didn't have sex regularly, truthfully.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. If someone listening today wants a better relationship, a better sex life, a deeper connection with the person they love, what's one thing that they can start doing tonight?
Probably listen. Don't talk, listen, right? Like, create space for people to really feel what's happening and be able to start to disclose it. So, be a better listener and show up for whoever it is that you say you love. And, and if you're having bad thoughts about yourself or somebody else, like, really work on, like, changing the channel in your brain so that you can, like, at least be neutral. Like, even if you can't be positive, if you can get to neutral, that's a place where curiosity can happen, so giving up that judgment and, shame, and then listening and showing up, like, all of those things are the base to build a fire. And get some love oil, for sure, at goodcleanlove.com. And, I feel like I have pretty good books. You can read them on Kindle or wherever you want. I basically talk like this in all the books. So if they feel like it's helpful, then they could read that. And also I have like 1 million blogs someplace. You just search my name and, and also I do TikTok videos. So
I love it. So much information that people can lean in towards, for sure. Mm-hmm. What are those spaces that people can find you? What's your Instagram? What's your website? And where can people purchase some of your products?
Strgar, at Instagram and TikTok. And, I have a ton of stuff on goodcleanlove.com. And I have a new business that we just launched if you have vaginal issues that are preventing you from enjoying sex. And we also have some amazing sexual health drugs on this new website, goodcleanclinicalcare.com. So if you're looking for some pharmaceutical support for sexual health, we have that on there. Oxytocin, which is a nasal spray, really helps to open up that part of your brain to be more intimate. So we sell that, and we also sell this arousal cream, which is a form of Viagra for women, so topically, for both men and women. And there's another drug there too. So those are things, if they really feel like they need that much support, they can do. But we have, I think, the best lubricants in the world because they're protecting your vaginal microbiome when you use them. And also really great wash for men and women, because hygiene. And we have love oil. So all of those things will get you much closer to the sex you want to have than where you are right now.
Wendy, today was so fun. I really
That was
appreciate your
great.
vulnerability, your storytelling, the anecdotal evidence, sharing of your experience, and just giving us a clean look and a peek behind the curtain of sex and desire and love and modern culture and biology, some of the taboo and the true meaning behind it all. So I really appreciate your time and your energy today.
Yeah, it was so fun, Bryce. And you, right back at you, right? This is a natural home for you because you're really naturally curious and kind of framing things right in the moment. It's really refreshing. And, I'm going to have Liz send you some codes so that people can get a discount if they want to buy any of those things on goodcleanlove.com or goodcleanclinicalcare.com. So she'll get to whoever your people are with my
I
people.
love that. We'll put that in our show notes and we'll share that for all of you guys listening. Guys, if you enjoyed my conversation with Wendy today, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time.